The apartment smelled like burnt coffee and regret. The kind of regret that seeped into the walls over months, maybe years, until even the paint seemed to absorb it. I stood at the kitchen counter, my fingers wrapped around a chipped mug that had once been white, but now bore the grey patina of too many dishwasher cycles. The ceramic felt rough against my palms, a texture I focused on because focusing on anything else meant acknowledging the purple-green bruise blooming across my left ribs. Outside, rain hammered against the window in sheets, turning the Seattle street below into a watercolor blur of headlights and neon. The glass rattled in its frame with each gust of wind, a rhythmic percussion that matched the throbbing in my side. I took a sip of the coffee, bitter cold now, and winced as the movement pulled at something tender beneath my skin. Travis would be home soon. The thought arrived like a stone dropping into still water, sending ripples of anxiety through my chest. I glanced at the clock on the microwave, 11:47 p.m. His shift at the warehouse ended at 11. That gave me maybe 20 minutes if traffic was bad, 15 if it wasn't. I should eat something. I should clean up the kitchen. I should be in bed, pretending to sleep, so he wouldn't find a reason to. My phone buzzed against the counter, the vibration loud in the quiet apartment. I flinched, nearly dropping the mug. Coffee sloshed over the rim, scalding my thumb. I set the cup down with shaking hands and looked at the screen. Asterisk. Where are you? You said you'd be home by 11. My sister, Rachel, safe in her townhouse across town, with her husband who brought her flowers on Thursdays and never raised his voice above a conversational tone. I stared at the message, at the casual expectation of a response, and felt something crack inside my chest. Not break. It had broken months ago. This was smaller. A hairline fracture in whatever was left. I typed back. Asterisk. Got held up at work. Home now. Talk tomorrow. The lie came easily. They always did now. I'd become fluent in the language of small deceptions, the tiny untruths that kept people from asking questions I couldn't answer. Rachel would accept it. She'd send back a thumbs-up emoji or a sleep well, and never know that I was standing in a kitchen that felt more like a cage, counting down the minutes until my boyfriend came home and decided whether tonight would be a good night or a bad one. The lock clicked. My entire body went rigid. The coffee mug sat forgotten on the counter as I listened to the sound of keys jangling, the door swinging open, heavy footsteps in the entryway. Travis's boots, the steel-toed ones he wore to work, hit the floor with two solid thuds. I heard him sigh, that particular exhale that could mean exhaustion or irritation or both. His voice carried from the living room, rough-edged and flat. I couldn't tell yet. Sometimes I could gauge his mood from the first syllable, but tonight the rain was too loud, and my heart was pounding too hard in my ears. Kitchen, I called back, hating how small my voice sounded. He appeared in the doorway, filling it with his frame. 6'2", broad-shouldered, with the kind of build that had once made me feel protected, and now just made me feel small. His dark hair was wet from the rain, plastered to his forehead, and his work shirt clung to his chest. The fluorescent kitchen light cast shadows under his eyes, made the stubble on his jaw look darker. Long shift, he said, moving past me to the refrigerator. He pulled out a beer, twisted off the cap with his bare hand. The metal cap clattered into the sink. Dave called in sick again. Had to cover his section and mine. I nodded, staying perfectly still by the counter. That's rough. Yeah. He took a long pull from the bottle, his throat working as he swallowed. When he lowered it, His gaze landed on me. Really landed, for the first time since he'd walked in. His eyes, brown, ordinary, the kind of eyes that belonged to someone who should have been ordinary, tracked down my body and back up. "You eat?" "I had something earlier." "You sure? You look thin." The observation hung in the air between us, neither compliment nor criticism, just a statement. I couldn't tell if he was concerned or if this was the opening move in a conversation I didn't want to have. "I'm sure," I said carefully. "Do you want me to make you something?" He studied me for another long moment, and I watched something shift behind his eyes, something that made my stomach clench. Then he smiled, and it didn't reach those eyes at all. "Nah, I'm good." He set the beer down on the counter too close to my hand. "You seem jumpy tonight." "Just tired." "Tired." He repeated the word like he was tasting it, testing its weight. "You're always tired lately." My phone buzzed again on the counter. Both of us looked at it. Rachel's name lit up the screen with another message. I didn't reach for it. Travis did. He picked up my phone before I could move, before I could think to stop him. His thumb swiped across the screen, unlocking it. He knew my passcode, had known it for months, had insisted on knowing it because couples shouldn't have secrets. He read Rachel's message, his jaw tightening. "She wants to know if you're coming to brunch on Sunday." His voice had gone very quiet. "You told her you'd think about it." "I forgot to mention it," I said quickly. "It just came up today." "Did it?" "Not a question." He set the phone down, but his hand stayed on it, pinning it to the counter. "Funny how these things just come up. How many times this month have you forgotten to mention plans with your sister?" "3 times, Elena. 3 times I found out after the fact that you made plans without talking to me first." His voice was rising now, taking on that edge I knew too well. "It's like you're trying to avoid spending time here, with me." "That's not true." "Then what is it?" He stepped closer, and I instinctively stepped back. My hip hit the counter, trapped, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're pulling away, like you're trying to leave. "I'm not. Don't lie to me." The bottle in his other hand came down hard on the counter, glass meeting laminate with a crack that made me jump. Beer foamed over the rim, pooling on the surface. "I work 10-hour shifts in that goddamn warehouse to keep this place, to take care of us, and you can't even be honest with me." My ribs ached where his elbow had caught me 2 nights ago. An accident, he'd said. He'd been reaching for the remote, hadn't seen me standing there. The apology had been immediate, his hands gentle as he'd checked for damage, his voice soft with concern. But the bruise had bloomed anyway, purple spreading into green, and now it throbbed with each rapid beat of my heart. "I'm sorry," I whispered, "because that's what you said. That's what made it stop sometimes." "You're right, I should have told you." But tonight, the apology wasn't enough. His hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, fingers closing tight enough to hurt. "Sorry doesn't cut it anymore, Elena. Sorry doesn't explain why you flinch every time I come near you. Why you look at me like I'm some kind of monster. I don't." "Yes, you do." He pulled me closer, and I could smell the beer on his breath, the sweat from his shift, the rain in his hair. "You think I don't notice? You think I'm stupid?" "No, Travis, please." The slap came fast, open-palmed across my cheek. Not hard enough to knock me down, but hard enough to snap my head to the side, hard enough to make my ear ring. Heat bloomed across my face, followed immediately by the sting of tears I refused to let fall. "Don't lie to me," he said again, softer now, almost gentle. His hand released my wrist and came up to cup my burning cheek, thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped despite my best efforts. I love you, baby. You know that, right? I just need you to be honest with me. That's all I'm asking. I nodded because my throat had closed up, because words felt impossible. Good girl. He kissed my forehead, lingering there for a moment before stepping back. I'm gonna take a shower, clean up this mess, okay? He left the kitchen, and I heard the bathroom door close, heard the pipes groan as he turned on the water. Only then did I let myself breathe. Really breathe, my chest heaving with silent sobs I couldn't afford to let him hear. My phone still sat on the counter where he'd left it. I picked it up with trembling hands, my cheek still burning, and opened my messages. Not to Rachel. I couldn't talk to Rachel, couldn't explain, couldn't bear the questions, or the concern, or the inevitable suggestion that I should just leave, as if leaving were simple, as if I had anywhere to go. Instead, I scrolled to my recent contacts, looking for, I didn't even know. Someone. Anyone. My vision blurred with tears, and my thumb slipped, selecting a number I didn't recognize. A wrong number, probably from a spam call I'd received weeks ago. I didn't care. I typed asterisk. Help me, please. I can't do this anymore. My finger hovered over the send button. This was insane. Texting a stranger, a wrong number, like some kind of desperate lifeline thrown into the void. But the shower was still running, and my face was still burning, and the bruise on my ribs was still throbbing, and I was so tired of being afraid in my own home. I hit send. The message disappeared into the digital ether, and I immediately felt foolish. What was I expecting? A response from a disconnected number. A miracle. I set the phone down and grabbed a dishcloth, started wiping up the spilled beer with mechanical movements, my mind numb. I froze, dishcloth dripping in my hand. Slowly, I picked up the phone and looked at the screen. Unknown number. Asterisk. Where are you, Ort? My breath caught. Someone had responded. Someone real, on the other end of that random number, had actually responded. My fingers shook as I typed back. Asterisk Seattle. Apartment on Pine Street. But you can't. The response came before I could finish. Unknown number. Asterisk address. Now, there was something in those two words, something commanding and absolute, that made me obey without thinking. I typed out the full address, my apartment number, and hit send. Then reality crashed back in. What was I doing? I'd just given my address to a complete stranger. Someone who could be anyone, could be dangerous, could be unknown number. Thesht, I'm on my way. Lock yourself in a room. Don't open the door for anyone but me. Asterisk. Who are you? Unknown number. Asterisk. Someone who can help. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. The shower was still running. Travis would be out in 5, maybe less. I stared at the phone, at this impossible conversation, and felt something shift inside me. Not hope. I didn't dare call it that. But something. A crack in the numbness, a flicker of possibility. I grabbed my keys from the counter and moved to the front door, turned the deadbolt as quietly as I could. Then I went to the bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed, with my phone clutched in both hands. The shower shut off. I heard Travis moving around in the bathroom, heard the medicine cabinet open and close. My heart hammered against my ribs. 7 minutes had passed, maybe 8. Not enough time. Whatever stranger I'd contacted couldn't possibly get here before Travis came out, before he noticed the locked front door, before he... A knock. Not at the apartment door, at the bedroom door. Elena, Travis's voice, muffled through the wood. Why's the front door locked? I couldn't speak, couldn't move. Elena, open this door right now. The handle turned, rattled against the lock I'd engaged. A lock that wouldn't hold if he really wanted in. It was flimsy, decorative, the kind that came standard in cheap apartments. I swear to God, if you don't open this door. Another knock, different, louder, from the front of the apartment. Travis stopped mid-sentence. I heard his footsteps retreat, heard him moving toward the front door. Through the thin walls, I heard him call out, "Who is it?" No response. Just another knock, patient and insistent. I heard the deadbolt slide back, heard the door open, heard Travis say, "Can I help you?" Then I heard a voice that didn't belong to this world. Low, resonant, with an accent I couldn't place. Something old, something that made the air itself seem to still. "You can step aside." "Excuse me, who the hell are you?" "I'm here for Elena Foster. She contacted me. You're going to let me in, and you're going to keep your hands where I can see them." My bedroom door shook as Travis slammed his fist against it. "Elena, did you call someone? Did you?" The sound that came next wasn't quite a crash, more like a sudden displacement of air. I heard Travis make a choked noise, heard something heavy hit the wall, then silence. Then that voice again, closer now, just outside my door. "Elena, my name is Roman. You're safe now. Open the door." I stood on shaking legs and moved to the door, my hand hovering over the lock. This was insane. I'd invited a stranger into my home, someone who had somehow crossed the city in impossible time, someone who had just done something to Travis that made him go silent. But my cheek still burned from the slap, and my ribs still ached, and I was so tired of being afraid. I unlocked the door and opened it. The man standing in my hallway was not what I expected. Tall, taller than Travis, which I hadn't thought possible, with dark hair that fell to his shoulders and eyes that caught the light wrong, reflecting it back like a cat's. He wore a black suit that looked expensive, even to my untrained eye, perfectly tailored, not a drop of rain on it despite the storm outside. He was beautiful, inhumanly beautiful, in a way that made my breath catch and my survival instincts scream in equal measure. "Elena Foster," he said, and my name in his mouth sounded like a prayer. His eyes tracked across my face, stopping on my reddened cheek. Something flickered in those strange eyes, something cold and deadly. "Who did this to you?" I couldn't speak, could only stare at him, at this impossible man who had appeared in my apartment like something out of a fever dream. He stepped closer, moving with a fluid grace that was all wrong, too smooth, too controlled. His hand came up slowly, giving me time to flinch away, but I didn't, couldn't. His fingers brushed my injured cheek with a gentleness that made my eyes burn with fresh tears. He tilted his head toward the living room, where I could hear Travis groaning, trying to get up. "The one who put his hands on you." I nodded. Roman's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the hallway seemed to drop 10 degrees. He turned away from me, moved into the living room with that same impossible grace. I followed, drawn by a compulsion I didn't understand, and saw Travis on his knees by the wall, one hand pressed to his throat, his eyes wide with fear. "You're going to listen very carefully," Roman said, his voice dropping to something barely above a whisper. "Elena Foster is under my protection now. If you ever come near her again, if you so much as think about her, I will know, and I will come back. Do you understand?" Travis tried to speak, managed only a wheeze. Roman crouched down, bringing himself eye level with Travis, and I saw my ex-boyfriend's face go pale. Whatever he saw in Roman's eyes, it terrified him in a way I'd never managed to. Nod if you understand." Travis nodded frantically. Roman stood, brushed imaginary dust from his suit, and turned back to me. His expression softened, became almost human again. "Do you have anything you need to take with you?" "Take with me? You're not staying here." He said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Pack what matters. We leave in 5 minutes." I can't just—" "Yes," he said gently. "You can, and you will, because staying here means staying with him, and I don't think either of us wants that." He was right. God help me, he was right. I moved past him, past Travis still kneeling on the floor, and went to the bedroom. I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet and started throwing things into it: clothes, toiletries, my laptop, the few pieces of jewelry my grandmother had left me. My hands shook so badly I could barely zip the bag. When I came back out, Roman was waiting by the door. Travis hadn't moved, was still on his knees, staring at nothing. Roman took the bag from me without a word, his fingers brushing mine, and I felt a shock of cold that should have been unpleasant, but somehow wasn't. "The police will be here soon," Roman said, as he opened the front door. "I called them before I arrived. They'll take your statement if you wish, but you don't have to stay for it. The choice is yours." "How did you—" "Later." He placed a hand on the small of my back, guiding me into the hallway. "Right now we need to leave." We walked to the elevator, and I heard sirens in the distance, growing closer. Roman pressed the button for the ground floor, and as the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of my apartment, of Travis still frozen in place, of the life I was leaving behind. The elevator descended, and I felt Roman's presence beside me, solid and real and completely impossible. I should have been terrified, should have been running from him instead of with him. But when I looked up at his face, at those strange eyes that caught the light wrong, all I felt was safe. The doors opened to the lobby, rain still hammered against the glass entrance, and through it I could see red and blue lights reflecting off wet pavement. Roman's hand stayed on my back, steady and sure, as he guided me past the elevator toward a side exit I'd never noticed before. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the storm. He looked down at me, and for the first time he smiled. It was a small thing, just a curve of his lips, but it transformed his face from beautiful to devastating. "Somewhere safe," he said. "Somewhere he'll never find you." We stepped out into the rain, and Roman pulled off his suit jacket, draping it over my shoulders. It smelled like cedar and something else, something dark and spicy that I couldn't name. The fabric was warm despite the cold rain, warm like it had been heated from within. A car waited at the curb, black, sleek, expensive. Roman opened the back door and helped me inside, his hand supporting my elbow with that same careful gentleness. He slid in beside me, and the driver pulled away from the curb without a word, without even looking back at us. I watched my apartment building recede through the rain-streaked window, watched the police cars pull up to the entrance, and felt something inside me finally break free. Not the hairline fracture from before. This was bigger. This was the chains I'd been wearing for months, snapping all at once. I started to cry. Roman didn't speak, didn't tell me it was okay, or that everything would be fine. He simply reached over and took my hand, his fingers cool and strong around mine, and let me fall apart in the back seat of his car as Seattle blurred past in streaks of light and shadow. And somewhere in the midst of my tears, I felt him lift me, felt myself being cradled against his chest like I weighed nothing at all, felt his hand stroking my hair with infinite patience. "Sleep," he murmured, his voice resonating through his chest into my ear. "You're safe now. I promise you, Elena Foster. You're safe." The sirens faded behind us, swallowed by the rain and the night, and I closed my eyes against his shoulder, wondering what kind of man could move like he moved, could speak like he spoke, could make promises that sounded like vows, wondering where he was taking me, wondering if I'd just traded one cage for another, or if, impossibly, miraculously, I'd finally found a way out. I woke to silk, not the rough cotton of my own sheets, not the scratchy hospital blankets I'd known too many times before. This was something else entirely, cool and smooth against my cheek, smelling faintly of cedar and something darker, something I couldn't name. My body felt heavy, weighted down by exhaustion that went deeper than muscle and bone. For a moment, I kept my eyes closed, afraid that opening them would shatter whatever dream had carried me here. But the ache in my ribs was real, the tenderness in my jaw was real, and slowly, carefully, I let myself surface into consciousness. The room was dark, but not completely. Soft light filtered through what must have been floor-to-ceiling windows, painting everything in shades of silver and shadow. I was lying in a bed so large it could have swallowed 3 of me, wrapped in blankets that felt like clouds. The ceiling above me was high, impossibly high, with exposed beams that looked hand-hewn from ancient timber. I turned my head, wincing at the pull in my neck, and saw him. Roman sat in a chair beside the bed, his body angled toward me like a sentinel keeping watch. He'd removed his jacket, and his white shirt was rolled up at the sleeves, revealing forearms corded with lean muscle. His eyes were closed, his head tipped back against the leather, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked almost human, almost vulnerable, except for the absolute stillness of his chest. I watched him for a long moment, counting the seconds, waiting for the rise and fall of breath that never came. My own breathing quickened, my heart starting to hammer against my bruised ribs. The memory of the car ride flooded back, his impossible speed, his unnatural strength, the way he'd lifted me like I was made of air. His eyes opened, not slowly, not with the gradual flutter of someone waking from sleep. One moment they were closed, the next they were fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. In the dim light, they looked darker than before, almost black, with just a hint of that strange amber glow I'd glimpsed in my apartment. "You're awake," he said, his voice low and careful, as if he were afraid of startling me. "How do you feel?" I should have been terrified. Every instinct I'd honed over the past year screamed at me to be afraid of this man, this creature who didn't breathe, who moved like smoke, who'd carried me away to this place I didn't know. But when I looked at him, all I felt was the ghost of his hand in my hair, the steady strength of his arms, the promise he'd made in the darkness of his car. "Safe," I whispered, and watched something flicker across his face, surprise maybe, or relief. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and the movement brought him closer to the bed. Close enough that I could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the sharp angle of his jaw. "You're in my home," he said. "The penthouse suite of the Pierce Tower. You've been asleep for 14 hours. 14 hours. I tried to process that, tried to remember anything after crying in his car, but it was all a blur of exhaustion and pain and the sound of his voice telling me to sleep. "I should have asked your permission before bringing you here," Roman continued, and there was something almost formal in his tone, like he was reciting words he'd practiced. "But given the circumstances, I made an executive decision. If you want to leave, I'll arrange transportation immediately. No questions, no consequences." I pushed myself up on the pillows, ignoring the protest of my body, and looked around the room properly. It was massive, bigger than my entire apartment had been, with dark wood floors that gleamed in the low light and walls painted a deep charcoal grey. The windows I'd noticed took up an entire wall, offering a view of Seattle that made my breath catch. We were high up, so high that the city spread out below us like a carpet of stars, the Space Needle, a distant sentinel in the darkness. "What time is it?" I asked. 3 in the morning. He stood, moving with that same fluid grace that seemed too perfect, too controlled. "Are you hungry? Thirsty? Dr. Aris left instructions for your care." "Dr. Aris?" "My personal physician. He examined you while you slept. Nothing invasive, I assure you. Just enough to ensure you didn't have any internal injuries that required immediate attention." Roman moved to a side table where a silver tray sat waiting, and I noticed the way he walked, the way his feet made no sound on the hardwood floor. "You have 3 cracked ribs, extensive bruising, and a mild concussion. He left pain medication, but said you should eat first." He lifted a crystal glass and a covered plate, bringing them to the bedside table with movements that were almost ceremonial in their precision. When he removed the silver dome, I saw soup, something rich and dark that smelled of herbs and roasted vegetables, and fresh bread that looked like it had been baked hours ago. My stomach cramped with sudden, desperate hunger. "I don't understand," I said, looking from the food to him. "Why are you doing this?" Roman settled back into his chair, maintaining a careful distance between us. "Because no one else was," he said simply. "Because I saw what he did to you, and I couldn't walk away. You don't even know me." "No." His eyes held mine, and in their depths I saw something ancient and sad and infinitely patient. "But I know what it's like to be trapped. I know what it's like to believe there's no way out." I wanted to ask him what he meant, wanted to press into that glimpse of vulnerability, but my hands were already reaching for the soup, my body overriding my mind's caution. The first spoonful was heaven, rich and savory and warm, sliding down my throat like liquid comfort. I ate slowly, aware of his eyes on me, aware of the strange intimacy of being watched while I did something as simple as eating. "The police," I said, between bites. "Did they arrested him." Roman's voice went cold, sharp as a blade. "He's being held without bail. Grant made sure of it." "Grant?" "My head of security. He's been coordinating with the Seattle PD all night." Roman leaned back, and the leather of his chair creaked softly. "Travis Morrison has outstanding warrants in 2 other states. Assault charges from previous relationships. The prosecutor is building a case that should keep him locked up for a very long time." The bread turned to ash in my mouth. "There were others, 3 that we know of." His jaw tightened. "I'm sorry. I know that's not easy to hear." It wasn't, but it also wasn't surprising. Travis had been too good at it, too practiced in his cruelty. You didn't learn that kind of systematic destruction overnight. I set down the spoon, my appetite suddenly gone. I should call my work. "My phone is being replaced." Roman gestured to the side table, where a sleek new iPhone sat in its box. "Your old one was damaged. This one has a new number, untraceable. I took the liberty of contacting your employer and explaining that you'd be taking emergency medical leave. I spoke with a Margaret Chen in HR, told her you'd been the victim of a domestic assault and would be recovering for the next several weeks. She was very understanding. Your job is secure, and your health insurance will cover any medical expenses." I stared at him, torn between gratitude and the creeping sensation of having my life rearranged without my consent. "You can't just—" "I can," he said quietly. "And I did, because you were in no condition to handle it yourself, and because someone needed to protect your interests while you healed. He stood again, moving to the windows, and I watched his reflection in the glass. Or rather, I watched the city lights shine through the space where his reflection should have been. My heart stopped. The glass was clean, polished to perfection. I could see the room behind him, could see my own pale face in the bed, could see every detail of the furniture and the walls. But where Roman stood, there was nothing. Just an empty space shaped like absence. He turned and caught me staring. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken questions and impossible answers. "You see it," he said finally. It wasn't a question. I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. My mind was racing, trying to find some rational explanation, some trick of the light, or the glass, or my concussed brain. But I'd seen what I'd seen. Or rather, I'd seen what wasn't there. Roman walked back to the chair, moving slowly, deliberately, like he was approaching a frightened animal. "I'm not going to hurt you, Elena. I need you to believe that. What are you?" The words came out as a whisper. He sat, and in the low light his eyes caught that amber glow again, reflecting like a cat's in the darkness. "Something old," he said. "Something that shouldn't exist in your world of smartphones and skyscrapers and rational explanations." He paused, and I saw him choose his next words with care. "I'm what your ancestors feared in the dark, what they told stories about to keep their children safe at night. Vampire." The word hung between us, unspoken but deafening. I thought of the stillness of his chest, the impossible speed, the strength that let him carry me like I weighed nothing. The way he'd appeared in my apartment without a sound, without warning, like he'd materialized from shadow itself. "You're insane," I said, but my voice shook. "Am I?" He tilted his head, and the movement was too fluid, too predatory. "You saw me move tonight, Elena. You felt how cold my skin is. You're looking at a window right now that shows you everything except me." He leaned forward. "I'm giving you the truth because you deserve it. Because I won't build your safety on a foundation of lies." I should have run, should have screamed, should have done anything except sit there in his bed, in his silk sheets, staring at this man, this thing who'd just confessed to being a monster. But all I could think about was the gentleness of his hands, the way he'd held me while I cried, the promise in his voice when he'd told me I was safe. "Prove it," I heard myself say. Roman's eyes widened slightly. "Elena, if you want me to believe you, prove it." I pushed the blankets back, ignoring the pain in my ribs, and stood on shaking legs. "Show me what you are." He rose to face me, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something like fear in his expression. "You don't know what you're asking." "Yes, I do." I took a step toward him, then another, until we were standing close enough that I should have felt his breath on my face. But there was nothing. Just that faint scent of cedar and darkness, and the absolute stillness of something that had stopped breathing centuries ago. "Show me." For a long moment, he just looked at me. Then, slowly, he raised his hand to his mouth. I watched, transfixed, as his lips parted, as his jaw shifted, in a way that shouldn't have been possible. And then I saw them, fangs, long and sharp and undeniably real, extending from his canines like ivory blades. My knees went weak. Roman caught me before I could fall, his arms steady around my waist, and the irony wasn't lost on me, saved from fainting by the very thing that should have terrified me into unconsciousness. "Breathe," he murmured, and his voice was different now, slightly distorted by the fangs. "Just breathe, Elena." I did. In and out, focusing on the sensation of air in my lungs, the solid floor beneath my feet, the cool strength of his hands on my waist. When I finally looked up at him again, the fangs were gone, retracted back into wherever they'd come from, and his face was human again, almost human. "How long?" I asked. 243 years. He released me carefully, stepping back to give me space. I was turned in 1780, in what was then the colony of Virginia. I've been this ever since. 243 years. I tried to wrap my mind around it, tried to imagine living that long, seeing that much history unfold. And the blood is necessary, yes. He moved to a cabinet I hadn't noticed before, built into the wall with such seamless precision, it was almost invisible. When he opened it, I saw rows of glass bottles filled with dark liquid. But I don't hunt. Haven't in over a century. This comes from blood banks, hospitals, willing donors who are compensated generously for their contribution. He pulled out one of the bottles, and I watched as he poured the contents into a crystal glass with the same care someone might pour wine. The liquid was thick, darker than any wine I'd ever seen, and when he lifted it to his lips and drank, I saw his throat work, saw the tension ease from his shoulders. "Does it hurt?" I asked. "Not drinking fresh blood." Roman lowered the glass, and there was something like surprise in his eyes. "That's your question? Not whether I've killed, not whether you're safe here, but whether it hurts. You said you don't hunt. I believe you. And somehow, impossibly, I did. But that doesn't mean it's easy." He set the glass down carefully. "It's like living on bread and water when you're surrounded by a feast. It sustains me, keeps me functional, but it's not the same. Fresh blood is warmer, richer. It sings in the veins." He paused, his eyes finding mine. "But I made a choice a long time ago about the kind of creature I wanted to be. And that choice means sacrifice." I thought about Travis, about the choices he'd made, about the kind of man who would rather destroy than sacrifice anything. And I thought about Roman, standing in his penthouse surrounded by wealth and power, drinking cold blood from a bottle, because he'd decided that some things mattered more than satisfaction. "Why did you help me?" I asked again, because I still didn't understand. Really, why me? Roman was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. 87 years ago, he said finally, I failed to save someone. A woman who was trapped, hurt, terrified. I saw the signs, knew what was happening, but I convinced myself it wasn't my place to interfere, that humans had to solve their own problems. His hands clenched into fists. 3 days later, she was dead, and I've carried that weight every day since. The pain in his voice was raw, ancient, a wound that hadn't healed despite the passage of decades. I took a step toward him, drawn by that vulnerability, by the glimpse of the man beneath the monster. So when I saw you tonight, he continued, when I heard him hurting you through those walls, I knew I couldn't walk away. Not again. Not ever again. I'm not her, I said softly. No. He looked at me, and his eyes were human again, just grey and sad and infinitely weary. You're Elena Foster, and you're alive, and you're here, and that has to be enough. The weight of his words settled over me, and I understood then that this wasn't just about saving me. It was about saving himself, about finding redemption in the space between what he'd done and what he'd failed to do. I should have been afraid, should have been planning my escape, figuring out how to get away from this creature who drank blood and didn't cast reflections. But standing there in his penthouse, wearing his clothes, eating his food, I felt safer than I had in a year. Maybe that made me crazy. Maybe trauma had broken something in my brain, made me incapable of recognizing real danger. Or maybe, just maybe, I'd finally learned to tell the difference between a monster who hurt and a monster who healed. "I want to stay," I said. Roman's eyes widened. "Elena, just for a few days, until I figure out what comes next." I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly aware of how thin the borrowed shirt was, how exposed I felt. "I have nowhere else to go. My apartment is a crime scene. I can't go to my parents, and I don't have friends close enough to impose on. So unless you're going to throw me out—" "Never." The word was fierce, absolute. "You can stay as long as you need. Weeks, months, years if necessary. This is your sanctuary now, Elena. I swear it. Years." The word hung in the air between us, impossible and tempting. I thought about what it would mean to stay here, in this beautiful cage, protected by a creature who'd lived for centuries and still chose kindness over cruelty. "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded, then moved toward the door with that same silent grace. "The bedroom is yours. I'll be in my study if you need anything. It's down the hall, third door on the left. There are clothes in the closet that should fit you, and the bathroom is through there." He gestured to a door I hadn't noticed. "Try to rest. Your body needs time to heal." He was almost to the door when I called out, "Roman?" He turned, one hand on the frame. "Do you sleep?" A small smile touched his lips. "Not the way you do, but I rest. I dream sometimes." He paused. "Mostly I remember. 243 years of memories," I said. "That must be heavy. Some days more than others." His eyes held mine for a moment longer. "Sleep well, Elena Foster. You're safe here. I promise." Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. I stood there for a long time, staring at the space where he'd been, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 14 hours. I'd been beaten by my boyfriend, saved by a vampire, and offered sanctuary in a penthouse that probably cost more per month than I made in a year. My life had become a fairy tale, or a nightmare. I wasn't sure which. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me back to the bed. I slid under the silk sheets, feeling them cool against my bruised skin, and stared up at the ceiling. Through the windows, Seattle glittered like a promise, and somewhere in this building, Roman was sitting in his study, carrying the weight of centuries and the ghost of a woman he'd failed to save. I closed my eyes and let myself drift, feeling safer than I had any right to feel, protected by a monster who'd chosen to be something more. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of healing and discovery. Roman kept his distance, appearing only to check on me, to ensure I had everything I needed. But the penthouse itself became my world, a luxurious prison that felt more like a sanctuary with each passing hour. I explored slowly, carefully, learning the geography of his home. The kitchen was massive, all marble and stainless steel, stocked with food I hadn't bought and wouldn't have been able to afford. The living room had floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with volumes in languages I couldn't read, first editions that probably belonged in museums. And everywhere there was art, paintings and sculptures that whispered of age and value and a life lived across centuries. But it was the bathroom that made me cry. The tub was carved from a single piece of black marble, deep enough to swim in, with jets and controls that looked like they belonged on a spaceship. I filled it with water as hot as I could stand, added salts from a crystal jar that smelled of lavender and something darker, and sank into the heat with a gasp that was half pain, half relief. The water turned my bruises technicolor, purple and green and yellow blooming across my ribs, my arms, my thighs. I traced them with gentle fingers, cataloguing the damage, remembering how each one had been made. This one from the corner of the table, that one from his fist, These from when I'd tried to crawl away and he'd dragged me back by my ankle. I cried until the water went cold, then filled it again and cried some more. Roman found me there, hours later, when the sky outside had gone from black to grey to the pale gold of dawn. I heard the door open, heard his sharp intake of breath, and then he was kneeling beside the tub, his hand hovering over my shoulder like he was afraid to touch me. "Elena," he said, and his voice was broken. "Elena, please." I looked at him through swollen eyes and saw anguish on his face, saw the way his hands shook with the effort of not reaching for me. "I'm okay," I whispered. "You're not." He grabbed a towel from the rack, holding it out to me, his eyes carefully averted. "Come on, out of there before you freeze." I let him help me from the tub, let him wrap the towel around my shoulders with hands that were infinitely gentle. He didn't look at my body, didn't let his gaze linger on the bruises or the scars. He just held the towel closed and guided me back to the bedroom, where he'd laid out soft clothes and warm socks. "I'll wait outside," he said, and was gone before I could respond. When I emerged, dressed in cashmere that felt like a cloud, he was standing by the windows, his back to me, his shoulders rigid with tension. "I'm sorry," I said. He turned, and his eyes were that amber glow again, bright with emotion I couldn't name. "You have nothing to apologize for. I'm falling apart in your home. You're healing." He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just short of touching me. "You're allowed to fall apart, Elena. You're allowed to cry and rage and break things if you need to. This is your space now, your sanctuary, and I will stand guard at the door while you do whatever you need to do to survive this." The fierce protectiveness in his voice undid something in my chest. I swayed toward him, and this time when his arms came around me, I let myself lean into that impossible strength, let myself be held by something that shouldn't exist. "Thank you," I whispered against his shirt. His hand came up to cradle the back of my head, his fingers threading through my damp hair. "Always," he murmured. "For as long as you need me." We stood like that for a long time, and I felt his stillness, felt the absence of breath and heartbeat that should have terrified me, but instead felt like the most solid thing in my world. The intercom's harsh buzz shattered the moment like glass. Roman went rigid, his arms tightening around me for just a second before he released me and moved to the panel by the door. He pressed a button, and Grant's voice crackled through the speaker, tight with tension. "Sir, we have a situation. He's here." Roman's face went cold, predatory. "Who?" "Travis Morrison. He posted bail an hour ago. He's in the lobby, demanding to see Elena." The world tilted. I grabbed the back of a chair, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. "That's impossible. You said—" "I said he was being held without bail." Roman's voice was deadly calm. "Someone intervened. Someone with money and influence." He pressed the button again. "Stall him. I'm coming down." "Sir, he's threatening to call the police, claiming Elena is being held against her will." The rest of Grant's words were drowned out by the sound of Travis's voice, distant but unmistakable, shouting my name. "Elena. Elena. I know you're up there." The sound of his voice, that voice that had whispered love and screamed hate, that had promised forever and delivered pain, hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled backward, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps, my vision tunneling to a pinpoint. Roman was in front of me instantly, his hands on my shoulders, his face filling my field of view. "Breathe," he commanded. "Elena, breathe. He cannot reach you here. I won't allow it." But I could hear Travis still shouting, could hear him demanding, threatening, using that tone that meant violence was coming, that meant I'd pay for whatever transgression he'd invented. "I have to go," I gasped. "I have to go down there. I have to know." Roman's voice cut through my panic like a blade. "You will never go to him again. Do you understand me?" "Never." "You don't understand if I don't go." "He'll what?" Roman's eyes blazed amber. "He'll hurt you. He'll kill you. He's already tried, Elena. And the only reason he failed is because I was there to stop him." His hands tightened on my shoulders. "You are under my protection now. And that means he doesn't get to touch you, doesn't get to see you, doesn't even get to breathe the same air as you. Not while I exist." From below, Travis's voice rose to a roar, and I heard the sound of something breaking, heard Grant's calm voice trying to de-escalate, heard the threat of police and lawyers and consequences. Roman's jaw clenched. "Stay here," he said. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me. Do you understand?" I nodded, mute with terror. He moved to the door, then paused, looking back at me with eyes that had gone completely inhuman. "He will not reach you," he said, and it sounded like a vow. "I swear it on my immortal soul, Elena Foster. He will not reach you." Then he was gone, and I was alone with the sound of Travis's voice echoing up through the building, shattering the sanctuary I'd built, destroying the fragile peace I'd begun to feel. I locked the door with shaking hands and sank to the floor, my back against the wall, listening to the man who'd broken me, demanding entrance to the place where I was finally beginning to heal. And I wondered if Roman's promise was enough to keep the monsters at bay. The voices below rose and fell like waves crashing against stone. I pressed my palms against the hardwood floor, feeling the vibrations travel through the building's bones. Travis's rage was a living thing, filling every corner of the penthouse with its poison. Then silence. The sudden absence of sound was worse than the shouting. My heart hammered against my ribs as I strained to hear anything. Footsteps, voices, the reassuring murmur of Grant's diplomatic tones. Nothing, just the whisper of my own ragged breathing and the blood rushing in my ears. Minutes crawled by. 5, 10. The silence stretched until I couldn't bear it anymore. I stood on legs that trembled, moved to the door, pressed my ear against the cool wood. Still nothing. Had they left? Had Roman sent Travis away? Or had something worse happened, something I couldn't let myself imagine? My hand was on the lock when I heard it. A single footstep in the hallway outside. Measured, deliberate. Wrong. Elena. Travis's voice, muffled by the door but unmistakable. "Baby, I know you're in there. Open up. We need to talk." Ice flooded my veins. He'd gotten past Roman, past Grant. He was here, on the other side of this door, and the only thing between us was a lock I'd turned with shaking hands. "Come on. Don't be like this." His tone shifted, became the one he used when he wanted something, when he was about to make me believe his anger was my fault. "I just want to see you, make sure you're okay. That's all. Just open the door." My throat closed. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but stand there frozen while he rattled the handle. "Elena." Harder now, the veneer cracking. "Open this goddamn door." The handle turned. The lock held. "For now, you think you can hide from me." His voice dropped to something cold and flat. "You think some rich asshole with a fancy apartment can keep you safe. I know what you are. You're mine. You've always been mine. And you're going to open this door and come home where you belong." Something slammed against the wood. Once, twice. The frame shuddered. Then Roman's voice cut through the assault, like a blade through silk. "Step away from the door." I sagged against the wall, relief so intense it made me dizzy. "The hell I will," Travis snarled. "This is between me and my girlfriend. She is not your anything." Roman's words were precise, controlled, but underneath them ran a current of something ancient and terrible. "You were given a choice. Leave peacefully or be removed. You chose poorly. You threatening me." Travis laughed, but it sounded hollow. "You think I'm scared of you? I've dealt with bigger men than you. Trust me, I am not a man." The temperature in the hallway plummeted. I felt it through the door, felt the air itself recoil. "What the hell?" Travis's bravado faltered. "You came to my territory," Roman continued, and his voice had changed, deepened into something that resonated in my chest. "You threatened what is mine. You demanded entrance to my sanctuary. And now you will learn what it means to challenge a creature who has walked this earth for 3 centuries. "You're insane," Travis said, but fear had crept into his voice. "You're all insane. Elena, baby, please, don't speak her name." The words cracked like thunder. "Don't think it, don't breathe it. You have forfeited that right." I heard Travis stumble backward, heard his breath coming in panicked gasps. "Stay away from me. I'll call the cops. I'll..." "Go ahead." Roman's voice was silk over steel. "Tell them a monster threatened you in the dark. Tell them you saw things that shouldn't exist. See how that works for you." "What are you?" Travis whispered. "Your reckoning." The sound that followed wasn't quite human. A low growl that vibrated through the walls, through the floor, through my very bones. I heard Travis scream, heard him run, heard his footsteps pounding down the hallway, and then the stairwell door slamming open. Then nothing but the sound of someone breathing hard on the other side of my door. "Elena," Roman's voice, still not quite his own. "It's safe now. Open the door." My hands shook as I turned the lock. The door swung inward, and Roman stood there in the dim hallway light, and he was beautiful and terrible and not entirely human anymore. His eyes glowed amber in the shadows. His skin seemed paler, almost luminous. And when he moved toward me, there was a fluid grace to it that no human body could achieve. "You're hurt," I said, because there was blood on his collar, dark against the white fabric. "Not mine." He stepped inside, and I closed the door behind him, sealing us in together. "Travis won't trouble you again. Grant is ensuring he understands the consequences of returning." "What did you do to him?" "Showed him the truth." Roman's eyes met mine, and in them I saw centuries of darkness, of hunger, of power that could crush mountains. Showed him what waits for men who hurt the innocent. What waits for him if he ever comes near you again. I should have been afraid, should have run, but instead I stepped closer, drawn by something deeper than logic, stronger than fear. "What are you?" I whispered. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were human, mostly. "You know what I am, Elena. You've known since the moment we met. Your mind has been protecting you from the truth. But your body recognized me, recognized what I could offer you. Say it. I am vampire." The words fell between us like stones into still water. "I am predator and protector, monster and guardian. I have lived 300 years in the shadows, and I have never wanted anything the way I want you." My heart should have raced with terror. Instead it steadied, finding a rhythm that matched his words. "The blood," I said. "You need blood." "Yes." "Human blood." "Yes." He didn't look away, didn't try to soften it. "I feed from those who offer willingly. I take only what I need. I harm no one who doesn't deserve harm." I thought of Travis's scream, of the fear in his voice. What did you show him? My true face. Roman's jaw tightened. The thing I am when I stop pretending to be human. The thing that could tear him apart without effort, without thought. I let him see his death in my eyes, and I let him know that the only reason he still breathes is because you would not want his blood on my hands. But you would have killed him. Not a question. Without hesitation. His honesty was brutal and perfect. If he had gotten through that door, if he had touched you, I would have painted these walls with him and felt nothing. I should have recoiled, should have seen him as the monster he claimed to be, but all I felt was safe. Protected, wanted in a way that had nothing to do with possession and everything to do with choice. Show me, I said. Elena, show me what you are. All of it. No more hiding. He studied my face for a long moment, searching for something. Then he nodded, and the careful control he'd maintained since entering the room began to slip. His eyes brightened to molten gold. His canines lengthened, sharp and white and deadly. His skin took on an otherworldly pallor, and the shadows in the room seemed to bend toward him, drawn by some gravity I couldn't name. He was terrifying. He was magnificent. He was mine. I reached up and touched his face, felt the coolness of his skin, the sharp edge of his fang against my fingertip. This is what you've been protecting me with, I said. This power, this darkness. Yes. The word came out rough, strained. And you want my blood. His eyes closed. I want everything. Your blood, your body, your soul. I want to bind you to me in ways that transcend human understanding. I want to mark you as mine so thoroughly that every creature in this city knows you are under my protection. I want, he broke off, shaking his head. I want too much. What if I want it too? His eyes snapped open. You don't know what you're saying. Don't I? I stepped closer until I could feel the cold radiating from his skin, until I could smell something dark and spiced that made my head spin. You saved me. You gave me sanctuary. You showed me what it means to be protected instead of possessed. And now you're standing here, showing me the monster you are, and all I can think is that I've never felt safer in my life. Elena. My name was a prayer and a warning. I choose this. I said. I choose you, whatever that means, however dark it gets. I choose the monster who treats me like I'm precious over the man who treated me like I was nothing. Something broke in his expression. He pulled me against him, and his body was hard and cold and perfect, and his mouth found mine with a hunger that the kiss was nothing like the gentle ones we'd shared before. This was raw need, desperate want, 3 centuries of loneliness crashing against my willingness to be consumed. His fangs grazed my lower lip, and I gasped, and he pulled back with a sound that was half growl, half groan. If I start, he said, his voice wrecked, I won't want to stop. Then don't stop. I tilted my head, exposing my throat, offering him everything. His control shattered. He buried his face in my neck, breathing me in, and then his fangs pierced my skin, and the world exploded into sensation. Pain, sharp and bright, followed immediately by pleasure so intense I couldn't stand. He caught me, held me against him, and drank, and with every pull I felt him inside me, felt our souls tangling together, felt the bond forming between us like steel cables wrapped in silk. I could feel his hunger, his desire, his absolute devotion, could feel 300 years of loneliness finally ending, could feel him claiming me in ways that went beyond flesh, beyond blood, beyond anything I'd ever imagined. When he finally pulled away, his eyes were blazing, and my blood stained his lips like wine. Mine, he said, and it was both question and declaration. "Yours," I answered, and felt the truth of it settle into my bones. He sealed the wound with his tongue, and I felt the skin knit together, felt the pain fade into a pleasant warmth. Then he lifted me, carried me to the bedroom, and showed me all the other ways a vampire could worship his chosen mate. Later, much later, I lay in his arms as dawn crept toward the windows. He'd closed the blackout curtains, sealing us in darkness, but I could feel the sun's approach in the way his body tensed. "Sleep," I murmured, running my fingers through his hair. "I'll keep watch." He smiled against my shoulder. "My fierce protector, you protected me. Now I protect you." His arms tightened around me. "I love you, Elena Foster. I will love you until the stars burn out and the world ends." "I love you too," I whispered, and felt the truth of it echo through the bond between us. As he drifted into the death sleep of his kind, I lay awake, listening to the city wake beyond our sanctuary. Somewhere out there, Travis was running, would keep running, would never stop looking over his shoulder for the monster in the dark. But here, in Roman's arms, I was finally home. The scent of his cologne mixed with the copper tang of my blood still on his lips, and I breathed it in, this new perfume of safety and belonging, and smiled into the darkness that had become my light.